it depends what your roof
rafter.
looks like, too. I mean,
Yes.
if you have access to the inside, you could probably slide it up, tack it, and then go inside and finish the nailing
Yeah.
easily. If you can't get into the attic or it's cathedral or whatever, there's no like one size fits all, but that's a cool project. Sounds like,
Yeah.
yeah. You should definitely do that. Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. I'm Justin Fink. I'll be your host. Today, sitting next to me are Brian and Matt. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hey, Justin.
We're recording a little bit later than usual today because my mouth was numb from going to the dentist this morning.
Yeah, I'm impressed that you're pulling this off.
Oh yeah, you kidding me? It was you guys ever had a crown put in?
No.
They essentially cut your tooth down to a tenon, and then they put a mortised tooth onto it.
Yeah.
I was sitting there, I was struck by it was like such an interesting, going to the dentist is such an interesting balance between like innovative, awesome technologies. Like who figured out that you could inject novocaine and numb just an area and then hours later it wears off, and it's little, like the two-part, like that on that side of things, like the x-rays. And then you go to the other side of things where they are literally shaving, drilling your tooth down to be a square-shaped post, putting essentially like quick-set two-part foam epoxy on it to get the shape, and then putting on a piece of porcelain. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like these guys are carpenters.
Yep. Did the same thing to a backsplash.
Yeah. Anyway, somehow the world thinks it's more prestigious to be a dentist, but we're trying to change that. KeepCraftAlive.org. So today we got some questions. We've got our editor's picks, and so I think we should just dive. Oh, I wanted to talk about something else, and I forget what it was. So I guess we're just going to have to dive right in because my memory has faded here. So let's go to question one. Josh writes, would elastomeric caulk, for instance, OSI Quad brand, work in place of acoustical sealant when applied to a wall's top plate to air seal? Matt, take it away.
Oh.
Whoa.
Sorry,
Rotate that
guys.
whole table.
Right when I say take it away, Brian moves
I
the
took
whole
the
table.
table. I took the table away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think before we get into that, it's what is the goal of air sealing? What are you trying to do? And I mean, you're basically trying to turn the house almost into like a balloon.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to keep other air out and keep the air you want in. So, if it's helium, you want to keep the helium in. You want to keep the regular air out. So you're just trying to basically keep your hot or conditioned air in and the outside air outside. And you're just, trying to build something that's robust. It's not going to pop on you. And
Yep.
it's going to, keep everything where you want it.
And essentially, I mean, people do this in all sorts of ways, and this is we're in kind of in that flux stage of building where there's sort of some proven methods, and other people do things different ways, and people are trying different materials, different products, different assemblies to get to the point of air sealing a house.
And there's to that end, there's some parts that it's really simple.
Yeah.
You have a big uninterrupted plane of wall inside or out, easy to air seal.
Yeah.
You get to a transition, you got to get from the wall to the ceiling somehow, not always that easy. Or you have a
Right.
penetration, not always that easy. So some aspects of a house lend themselves to really straightforward, straight ahead methods, and other things and then you get into tricky designs and things can get a little interesting too.
So, but my first reaction to this, and I don't know what, in terms of Josh's work, I don't know where he's coming into this job. Maybe he's an insulator, and so he didn't frame it. Maybe he's the builder, and he's building the house from ground up and wants it to be airtight. The reason why I bring that up is I don't know how much control he has over the sequence here. To me, ideally, the air sealing work would be done on the outside face of the building as your first major stab at it. And then anything applied like caulk to joints and things would be sort of supplemental or in areas where you couldn't easily do it from the outside, maybe like around window frames. It's sort of like a backup system to me.
Well, but even if you, let's say you use zip sheathing.
Yep.
And you tape the seams, and
Yep.
that's going to be your air seal on the walls on the outside.
Yes.
You have to make a transition now, let's say, to the roof plane inside for your air seal. And
Yep.
is that where he's talking about maybe air sealing?
I don't know. I mean,
the
I'm not
plates
sure.
At that transition?
He says walls top plate. So maybe.
Yeah, I thought that's probably what he was going for too. Because at first I thought he was talking about the drywall, and then I was like, wait, no, maybe he's talking about the sheathing on the outside.
I thought it was maybe he's talking about the double top plate and he wants to get the joint between them or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Regardless. Well, I mean, so to Brian's point, what a lot of people are doing is running something like zip system sheathing on the outside, taping it to the foundation wall, and then going all the way up and then across, or using that top plate as kind of the bridge from exterior to interior, and then the air barrier, now that it's inside, runs up along the underside of the roof rafters. So the best way to do that is before the roof rafters go on, you put a big swath of peel and stick membrane that wraps out to the outside face, across the top plate, and then it kind of dangles to the inside. Then when you frame your roof, you can, put a second piece of tape that sticks that up to the sheathing.
Yeah.
To the underside of the rafters,
Underside
whatever
of
you
the
do there,
rafters,
whether
yeah.
that's a membrane or some people do more zip system. A lot of people are using stuff like Intello and membrane and some, Proclima makes a lot of products, I think, that do this. So the question then boils down to caulk versus other options.
Yeah, so really, I guess, the question is, if you have some air sealing to do around some framing, what's your product?
And especially, I like that he brought up OSI Quad, which is it's a really good caulk / sealant. I'm not going to try and get particular with the details between those two because I always forget, and who cares. But OSI Quad is super tough, super stretchy, and they're kind of known for making a really durable product. So I wouldn't have much problem using that. The reason why a lot of people use acoustical sealant is that it never hardens. So the idea being that as caulk and sealant dry, they are now perhaps more subject to cracking, peeling away from a surface, etc.
From what
it's sort of like, I don't know.
From what I gather, there's a go-to sealant in the high performance world, which is the Tremco stuff.
Yeah, Black Death.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It is so messy and sticky.
So messy and sticky to work with, but that's what when I ask what you use to these guys who are doing real high performance homes, and they seem to really believe in that product.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've seen people use it under, like between plates in the subfloor, underneath a mud sill, around, behind zip system sheathing before it's installed, like picture frame the perimeter of where the sheet's going to land. It's kind of an all-purpose, buy a bunch of cases of it and then put it everywhere you can think of, kind of a thing. It's often used in a lot of places where you don't have a second chance. So it's like, it's redundant. It's supposed to be redundant, hopefully.
Right. You've got something else, hopefully. As your primary.
But I've also seen a lot of these guys, especially in like retrofit work, where they'll tell you have the drywall or the plaster off. A lot of people will kind of seal obvious things with sealant from the inside. And I've seen even like Paul Biebel, who does high performance building in Vermont. He does the zip system on the outside, but then he caulks and does spot spray foam on the inside.
Yeah.
To make up for those weak areas. So I don't have any problem with that in general. If it's going to be exposed, like somebody could put their hand on it, you probably don't want to use Tremco because it's never going to harden. It's going to be goopy for 50 years.
Yeah.
At least sealant will harden. So if you're going to use the attic for storage, it's a walk-up.
Right.
I don't know what the situation is, but
but
like on principle, I wouldn't have a problem using caulk. I know people use it around windows a lot for like an added seal between the they'll put spray foam around the window insulation, and they'll kind of put a bead of caulk and smear that, and then put tape over it.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's going to be. It sounds like in this application, it's going to be behind something else anyway. Like you don't have to worry about UV exposure. I mean, when you're using it like at the ends of like when you're going from siding to trim or around a window, it may dry out and crack there. But if you're using it in some place where it's hidden and it's never going to get that kind of exposure, it may last very well as long as, the acoustical sealant maybe, I would think.
I think that the other benefit of the acoustical sealant, right, besides that it doesn't harden and then maybe crack or pull away from the surface at all as it shrinks and hardens, is also that it if you're installing it where materials will move against each other, it allows that movement to happen
without cracking,
and it maintains that goop, whatever you want to call it. It maintains that seal in that way.
It's tenacious.
Yeah. So shear, as opposed to just joints that might pull away from each other and then close up, but it also resists that shear movement.
The other thing to know about here is just, and this is just kind of good overarching advice, is so critical to have clean, dry surfaces that you're applying this stuff to. Like whether it's the tape on zip system sheathing or some other, if you're just using OSB or ply, wouldn't want to tape the joints. A lot of people do that instead of buying zip.
And to follow the instructions. If your tape needs a primer, use the primer.
Yeah.
If your tape is supposed to be rolled out with a J roller, roll it out.
Yeah.
Because this is something that you're going to cover up and you're going to count on as your air barrier now for potentially decades or
I mean, think about
100 years.
Think about the life of the house.
The life of the house.
Think about the leap of faith with something like zip system sheathing, where you're going from like a very visible, mechanically lapped shingle style system like house wrap, where the bottom piece tucks under the top piece and so water can shed, and you're going to just tape, and people are putting that tape onto like dirty sawdusty sheathing that's as they're laying down the deck and framing, like they're cutting window openings and the sawdust is blowing over and then they're taping over the sawdust and the seam, and like that's all you've got. That's it. There's no weather lapping. If that water runs down the sheathing and it catches a little lip in that tape, you're done. So get a freaking roller, But yeah, you're right. The primer is another thing that people love to skip.
Primers. Some products require primers.
Yep.
Yeah.
And but the same goes for the interior. Get like a blowgun attachment for your air hose. Always have brooms, stiff brooms, soft brooms. Insist that your guys, do it right.
Yeah.
And I think that Zip System or Huber now makes a roller that has like a little, I think it has like a little Z imprint, like a little typewriter letter, so that when you roll it out, you can look at the tape and see that it has little Z's. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
They used to make a tape gun that like it wouldn't dispense unless you used a certain amount of pressure. That's a pain in the butt. But all right, did we hit that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm amazed every time we talk about this topic, publish this topic, put this topic on social media, that so many people still respond how air sealing is a bad idea.
Yep. Houses need to breathe,
Houses
Brian.
need to, and I'd love to have a conversation with someone who feels that way if they want to call into the show.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting because
listen, I get the sentiment, and I especially get it in really, really old buildings, ones that are so open to the breeze that even subtle changes might cause a catastrophic failure. Like, because in those cases, minor improvements might be a real problem. You might need to have like a really educated approach to, if I'm going to touch this 200-year-old building and try and make it energy efficient, I better know every part of this assembly and that it's going to really control condensation, and that I'm going to have no problems with moisture buildup, and which way is the moisture going to move during the seasons and that stuff. It demands an understanding.
Absolutely, it demands an understanding, and being a builder demands that you
take it seriously
and learn and understand these things, and not just write it off. Because hey, if someone who feels this way calls in and says, that's why I don't put any insulation on old houses, I don't put anything on the walls, I don't use any kind of vapor retarders, and I just let them be wide open, then okay. Then you made a decision. Whether or not I think you're making a smart decision in terms of energy performance, that's another question. But you've made a decision that is smart in terms of keeping the house healthy.
Well, so
sure, leave it completely open. Leave the siding on the studs. But you're right. As soon as that, and that's the thing. As soon as you start to add, you have to have a strategy. And most of the time, there's no one yet have I heard made an argument for, I know exactly at what level to tighten this house where it can still breathe.
Yes.
And at what level to leave it leaky so that the whole house from one wall to the other, from one roof plane to the other, is breathing in a way that the house is going to stay healthy. As soon as you start to do this, now you have concerns, and the more surefire way to get to a healthy house is to make it tight, to know that it's tight, because we can test that
Easily.
and then to ventilate the house properly.
Yeah. Oh,
You can't figure that out. And I'm going to leave it leaky. Show me how you figure that out.
yeah.
That house is healthy.
A couple of things here. One, that reminds me that Patrick just did a Tool Tech video on using a blower door. He does a whole walkthrough on his own house of how to set it up, how to run the test, and his house catastrophically failed. But it's a like people. I think that device looks scary to people, but it's really pretty. Like, you plug a couple of things in to like match A to A and B to B, and turn it on, and the fan kicks on. And you can measure really easily what's going on.
And it comes with instructions that make it like.
Yeah, did you do it in your house too?
Yeah, I did it at my house, and mine was slightly better than his. Only after I put a plug in the chimney.
Yeah,
because up till then it was like 9 air changes.
We're gonna do on the show. We're each gonna take it home, or we're gonna do tests, and then we're gonna come in and compare notes, see whose house is the tightest or the worst.
Yeah,
mine will be the worst. But it's funny. I don't mean to make this about the dentist, but like I'm thinking back to that while you're talking, Brian, because it's like I'm trying to think about parallels here, and like at some point dentists started using novocaine, right? Mm-hmm. So in my eyes, that was for one of two reasons. One, so that they could market themselves as, hey, we use novocaine, you should come use us because it's not going to hurt as bad. Or B, it's going to be healthier and safer for you, right? Mm-hmm. Like a performance thing. And I just feel like it's the same deal in building. It's like you have to make a decision. It's either, you're going to provide the best service you can, and you've read up on the technology, you understand that this is available, and whether you offer that as a differentiating factor, as I can make a better product than the other guy because I understand this and I can sell it to you, or because you want to make the best possible thing because you really believe in it. I don't really care what your motivation is. It could be one or the other. Hopefully it's the second one, but you know what I mean? Like it's there, it's proven, and you're going to, like, one way or the other, you're going to have to do it because it's in the code now. And it's not enforced in your area yet, but if you're building a house, you have to hit a certain number of air changes per hour. And it's going to be a freaking wake-up call for people, because my house doesn't hit that number, not even close. I guarantee it. Mm-hmm. And if you just roll in there and you're late to the party, in terms of air changes, how the hell do I do that?
Yeah.
You better, these guys who have figured it out are going to start to eat your lunch.
Yeah.
So.
And yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
You sure?
Yeah.
I feel like you were going to say something else.
No.
Any questions? Good. David writes, your podcast is great. Thanks, David. I've been trying to learn more about home building, and the variety of topics you guys cover and the level of details you guys go to has been making the endeavor very enjoyable for me. I have a question about stucco. I heard your guest on episode 42 quip that even a shoddily built stucco wall will do fine with water if it's covered by a large roof overhang, which makes sense to me. I'm dealing with a house that has old stucco walls and no roof overhang in the mid-Atlantic region where it rains often. Water leaks in and it messes up the plaster inside. Short of rebuilding the roof totally, do you guys know of any way that I could add a roof overhang to my house to protect it? Is a roof skirt an option, or is there such a thing as a sealant for my walls? Thanks for your time and for the show. Stucco. Have we talked about stucco on the show, Brian?
We don't like to talk about stucco around here.
Well, it's not super common in New England. In Pennsylvania, there's a lot of it, and it fails. It has like a long track record of being terrible failures in Pennsylvania because it's like the worst conditions for it, apparently. Mm-hmm. Have you ever installed it?
I have not installed it. I just watched it installed some right in my neighborhood recently, and I was a little surprised about what I saw, and I don't know what I saw for sure. So let me tell you a little bit about that. First, let me. You guys tell me if I understand a stucco system right.
All right.
So traditionally, well, maybe not traditionally, stucco that is not synthetic stucco,
right,
is a cement cladding for your house, and it's not much different than other types of concrete mixes in that it's cement and Portland cement and sand and water and lime mixed to a consistency that you can apply with a trowel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's typically, I think, is best practice still considered the EFIS system?
No,
Is that
that's the
still-
synthetic system.
That's for synthetic.
Yeah.
EFIS.
Yeah. It's
for
exterior insulation finishing system or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
That's the one that goes over foam. The traditional version.
But you can't install cement-based plaster over that?
You can't. We're talking about traditional here. So the traditional would be like the scratch coat.
Yep, the three
Sorry,
coats.
the base coat, the scratch. What is it? Base, brown,
Scratch coat is the base coat.
Yeah, scratch brown.
Oh,
Scratch brown finish.
All right. So it's 3 layers.
Right, but the
I don't know.
EFIS system is what is happening behind the stucco, right? It's the layers of the layer of foam and then wire mesh or fiberglass mesh.
Is that what
And
you
that's
saw in your
behind-
neighborhood?
No, that's not what I saw behind in my neighborhood.
So-
That's what I thought was how you did it with a substrate wire mesh attached to it, and then your
And
stucco
then
on the
stucco
wire
on
mesh.
top of that. That's my understanding of it too. Yeah.
Okay, and that can be, depending on the type of building, that can be done in a few different ways. It can be that the foam is glued to the building if you have the right surface to glue it to, or there can be a weather barrier back there,
Right.
And it can be screwed with caps,
Right.
screwed to that, and then the mesh and so what you've got there is you've created a weather barrier drainage plane between the foam and the building,
Mm-hmm.
and you've also got now it's sort of like a decoupling system, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The stucco is not now attached to the building.
Right.
What I did read recently is that you can, if you have the right masonry conditions, you can apply stucco right to masonry. So if you have
Stucco right to masonry.
yeah, you can apply
okay.
stucco right to like a block wall.
Yes. Yeah.
As long as this, like you were saying before, as long as the surface is clean, it wasn't painted,
Right.
it wasn't contaminated with anything,
Right.
or a brick wall, even if in those same conditions. But what I saw was a modern house, stick frame construction, and they put some black weather barrier. It looked like a weather barrier on it. It looked like, almost looked like tar paper, almost looked like felt, in that it was this horizontally lapped black paper, except that I think it might have been self-adhering. It seemed to stick well to itself. It seemed to lay down well. And they stuccoed these houses right onto that
So they put peel and stick up essentially, and then
stuccoed onto it. And I was
Yeah.
like, what is this what are they doing here?
what did the surface of it look like? Did it look like Grace Vicor kind of a thing, or
It
did
didn't
it
have any
have
names
like a
on it, that's why it was hard
surface?
to
like
tell.
like a very notable grooved texture or anything? Were you close enough to tell?
I was just driving by.
I think that
while they were doing
a
it.
lot of people are just thinking like, well, I don't want any problems back here, so I'm going to put a self-adhered membrane, and then I'm going to put wire lath over
They
it.
just stuccoed over it.
Really?
They had to have some kind of a tooth
Yeah.
to hold
Maybe
it.
it's a product that we
Yeah.
don't know about.
Yeah.
Well,
it may
you-
be something we haven't heard of.
But from what I understand, and I've been on jobs where they're doing this, they think like, well, best practice is I'm going to put peel and stick up, and then I'm going to attach the wire lath to that, and then I'm going to put my scratch coat. But what you want behind stucco to work, and this is like the crucial thing, is you need like a very slight ability for drainage to happen. So 2 layers of felt paper has always been the traditional choice, still works today. And what happens is one layer gets applied to the sheathing, one layer gets applied over that. So now that outermost layer is where the stucco bonds to.
Right.
yeah.
And so you're not bonding the stucco right to the main layer, you're bonding it to like a sacrificial
Right.
layer. So that, and then when that, you still have a little bit of room for drainage between the 2 layers.
And again, decoupling, it's definitely separated from.
Yes, it's
Yeah, from the building.
it's like a slip sheet
Yeah.
almost, and you have to do this on zip system sheathing. You have to do it on regular house wrap houses. I mean, you can I think technically do 2 layers of plastic house wrap, but I think even in those cases, most people prefer, if you're going to use house wrap, put felt over it before you put on the wire lath. But you see all the time, and is in manufactured stone, like stick stone veneer, cultured stone, that stuff on exteriors. That's essentially stucco. It's just that you
Right.
replace the outermost layer with stone.
Right.
Yeah.
Joe Stiebrick calls it lumpy,
Yeah,
lumpy
lumpy
walls or something.
lumpy stucco.
Lumpy stucco.
Yeah.
So in those cases, you still have to have 2 layers. And we talked about this on the show, I think, a long time back in the early episodes. There was a house going up near me, and I was watching the masons work, and they did house wrap over OSB and then wire lath and then, lick and stick stone. And it was not good. Like it's almost like you don't know what to do in that situation. You want to stop them and be like, this is going to be a huge problem. Like, there's no way it's not going to rot. Like, it's going to rot.
Yeah.
And so for some reason, we can't get stucco right. And it's like a continuous, like everybody continues to screw it up. Just put 2 layers of felt behind it. You're done. Like, it will work all the time, always.
Yeah.
Even if, but the problem with what you're talking about, the EIFS system, is that there's foam behind it and there's no drainage. So if you incorporate drainage into the foam, you're fine.
Yes, you can simply put a house wrap behind the foam.
Yeah.
And then you've got your drainage.
Yeah, which a lot of people do even when they're not doing stucco,
Right.
they're doing siding. So thinking layers, it works every time.
Yeah.
All the time. But I don't know who said this thing about in episode 42 about the roof overhang. Who would that have been? Steve Basic, maybe?
I
Or
heard you guys
Martin?
at episode 40. Who was on episode 42? That's a long
Yeah, I
time
don't know.
ago.
Yeah. Who can remember that far back? We could look it up, but I mean, why would we do that?
I think maybe the point that whoever made that statement, maybe the point was simply that, that the problem with stucco is rain and water, and so now if you protect it, it's not going to demand the same levels of performance as if it's unprotected.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they were trying to say.
I don't think, but I mean, in this guy's situation, and we don't have photos from this question, but it doesn't seem to me that focusing your efforts on putting on a roof overhang is going to be your biggest bang for the buck here.
Although, I mean, if he's got a situation where it's already starting to, he's already got problems.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll at least prevent, more problems, I guess, but I mean, it's not going to remedy what's already there. I mean, if the sheathing, if he has OSB under there and it's already rotted, like it's not going to, the only way to fix that is going to be to take off the stucco and go and.
Right. So, I mean, the roof overhang is sort of like wasting your money. I mean, maybe do the job again. If you do it right, the roof overhang probably won't matter that much. Or you could decide to do the roof overhang as part of the renovation to your stucco work.
Well, also, we would need a little bit more information from him, but I'm not convinced that he doesn't just have a roof leak.
Yeah.
That's possible
true.
too.
You know, if it's happening in the same place regularly on the walls inside, he might just have a leak in his roof.
The one thing that you can say about stucco problems is that it's not a problem with windows typically. Like, because you'll see it in the middle of a wall with no windows.
Yeah.
So that's one of kind of the defining characteristics of diagnosis of stucco problems is, there's really nothing around that you can blame it on. And that's sort of what makes it very clear and positive that it really is a stucco assembly problem.
Yeah. And Stiebrick, you probably read the same thing that I did that he wrote. I mean,
Yeah, we should put that article up.
Yeah, he lists a whole bunch of reasons why this stuff is failing, and the building wrap is one. People using one layer of felt paper instead of 2, or using synthetics, using a plastic weather barrier. The use of OSB instead of plywood is another one, really, because the OSB doesn't have the same vapor permeance that plywood does, and if it gets wet, the water doesn't basically travel through it like it does with plywood. It can, because with plywood, it can at least go to the edges of the sheet.
Right, because in plywood,
it's in that plane.
You've maintained the cellular structure of the wood, which means that the water is going to move predictably through those plies, as if what is this? The main example for everybody who doesn't know how to think about like the cellular structure of wood. If you took like a bundle of straws, like took a bunch of straws and wrapped a rubber band around them, and then that sort of like mimics a tree trunk. So you can kind of suck water up through those straws. So if you took all those straws and you laid them out flat, water would still move through the straws in the same way. It would still follow that same cellular structure. But if you chopped up all the little straws into a bunch of little slices and then scattered them in opposing directions and surrounded them by glue, it like you do for OSB, it's not. The water's not going to be able to kind of disperse or push to the edges and dry like you can with plywood, which is a lot of. I mean, what I'm saying is, a lot of people already know that, and that's all why a lot of people hate OSB.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's not the case for everything. There's really good OSBs. You know, I'm mostly talking about commodity stuff, but obviously like something like Advantech or Zip System or any of these kind of enhanced OSBs are going to have different sorts of resins and things that are kind of protecting from moisture absorption in the first place.
Yeah.
So you're going to be at an advantage there. I don't know whether to believe, the reason I say that, I don't know whether to believe Stiebrick when he says that OSB is riskier than plywood. All OSB or just like commodity?
I think he's, I think he's probably talking about commodity.
I would think so too.
But I mean, he has solutions for that too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and the 2 layers of felt,
paper
is basically the go-to that or a rain screen gap. But also, I mean, he talks about the inability of these things to dry because we're putting so much insulation in the walls that didn't used to be a problem. You didn't have these stucco failures in the past because the insulation levels were so low or non-existent.
Right, it's
and
so much heat moving through the wall.
So it was drying out that stucco or stone so quickly. It never became an issue. There was no opportunity for mold to grow. And then you also have the poly vapor barriers on the inside that are just sort of locking all of that moisture, helping to lock that moisture in the wall.
Yeah.
And so they can't dry to the inside either when they do get wet.
Right.
So
you that's a true rot sandwich.
Yeah.
And I'd like to bring this one back to the dentist. No, I'm kidding. I'm not. So that's that. What is the name of that article? Is it Stucco Woes or something?
I can't
Well,
remember.
I'm going to dig it
Something
up
like
and we'll put it at finehomebuilding.com/podcast.
What's a roof skirt?
I have no idea.
Yeah, stucco woes.
What do you know what a roof skirt
What's
is?
he talking
I
about?
think he's talking about like one that would a roof that would be around the top of the first floor, that would sort of go around the house and sort of direct water away, at least at that level. I don't think it would do anything for the second floor if he has one.
Well, yeah, we don't even know how many stories the house has.
So, I mean, but above that, I mean, it may not. I don't know what details he has, but that may be some other material anyway.
So even if it was applied right under the main roof eaves, it would just basically be like a little secondary roof running around at the top. You could probably make it into some sort of a feature if you worked at it.
Yeah.
Depending on the style of the house.
And he did ask, about adding roof overhangs, and you can't do that. Just, it may not be the first thing that he wants to go right out and start doing.
Yeah, we should probably actually address that part of it too.
But you can add roof
that's what he
overhangs to a
asked.
house. It requires pretty extensive work.
Give us the rundown, Brian. Should we assume like a typical wood trimmed asphalt shingle roof for this case study that we're about to run through?
Yeah.
I say yes.
Let's say we have so you're saying a stick framed roof.
Yeah.
And instead of having any overhangs, they just bumped out some trim boards, like
right.
with a subboard to just give it a little bit of depth.
Yep.
So when you take those trim boards off, often everything's right in plane.
Yep.
The ends of your rafters are right in plane with the walls or close to it, and the rakes are right in plane with the walls.
Yep.
The rafters going up the rake are right in planes with the walls.
So you remove that fascia board, the trim board.
So you remove the fascia board, you remove the rake boards, and now you can build on the ground.
And the rake board is the 2x material that's nailed to the end of the rafters. Right? Is that what you're saying?
No, the rake board going up the rake on the
sorry,
gables.
Sorry, the subfascia is what I'm.
Yeah, well, let's just say take off all the roof trim, all the way around the roof, and you can build overhangs for both the eaves and the rakes on the ground. You can build them as little structures that you bring up, and really pretty simply, just for the first part of the install, pretty simply, you can just screw them into place with structural screws.
Right, timber locks or
or
GRK or Simpson makes
some. The harder part is that you need to tie that back into the roof.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to peel back.
To resist racking and uplift and those issues. And so you'd have to peel back your roof, and you'd either have to even peel back the sheathing at those areas to tie it back in, or you'd have to add just a full layer of sheathing on top of what you have.
Right.
Because that just like every other part of the house, that plywood diaphragm makes everything tight and stiff.
I would. The reason why I was asking about the subfascia thing is I would think, and I'm just kind of riffing here, I've never done this, but I would think that if you took off the trim, took off that subfascia, the 2x, and then sistered rafters, let's say 2 or 3 feet up.
Oh, you can do that too.
Then you could put sheathing on the top, and you wouldn't have to peel far back because the plywood or the whatever roof sheathing you use is not doing as much. It's to like hold things together or reinforce that screwed joint because you've essentially extended the rafters, and the rafters are doing most of the work.
Yeah, it would depend where you are. If you're in a high wind zone, uplift's a real concern with overhangs, and you probably would have to maybe even have an engineer tell you exactly how far that rafter extension needs to go and how much plywood you need. But
and
if
the
you're
fastening schedule too, glue and screw and
but if you're not there, then you're probably right.
Yeah,
because it almost becomes like the same kind of situation as a cantilever. You're bringing it way back. You're fastening it like crazy up the
it depends what your
rafter.
Roof looks like too. I mean, if you have access to the inside, you could probably slide it up, tack it, and then go inside and finish the nailing easily. If you can't get into the attic or it's cathedral or whatever, there's no like one size fits all. But that's a cool project. Sounds like yeah. He should definitely do that, just because it would be fun.
Yeah, and I don't know what his house looks like, but it might look better.
Yeah. Roof overhangs always look better.
My house, when I added roof overhangs just on the gables. I had overhangs at the eaves, but not at the gables, and I added them at the gables, and it made the house look a lot better.
Yeah. Houses deserve some details to make them worth looking at.
I need to do that to mine. I got nothing on the ends either.
Yeah. So what are you gonna do? You gonna sister it like I said, or are you gonna do Brian's weenie method?
Well, on that, I don't know. We'll see when I take the roof off eventually. Yeah, because I want to go up a second floor, at least on the main house.
You're not going to do it.
I don't know.
I know what that answer means. That answer means I'm not doing this.
Yeah. But on the garage, I don't know. That may be an easy one to tackle first and then just see if I like it.
Like I said, but on the garage, I don't know. As if like came in with some conviction. Not going to do that one either.
No.
Oh.
I won't feel as bad if I ruin that.
Yeah. We know some people who throw tarps up on their outbuildings and then wait so long to do it that the tarp wears out, and then they replace the tarp with the second tarp. So, it's like the shoemaker's house around here. So let's do our editor's pick for this week. Editor's picks, excuse me. For those of you who didn't hear the other episode where we did this, we're kind of, as a group, we're picking our favorite articles under different categories to help kind of spread awareness for some of the cool content we have that you guys can check out. Often we reference all of this stuff in the answers to your questions, but we don't get to hit everything, and we don't get to hit all of the cool sawdusty topics. So we wanted to kind of surface some of that stuff. So this week, our topic, our category is favorite old house repair articles. Who wants to go first?
Well,
I can't get mine up.
Yeah, I'll start with this only because I kind of brought this up last time. I'm talking about taking out some interior walls to expand my bedroom.
Yep.
And this invisible repairs for a hardwood floor.
What issue number is that?
This is
we should probably give people that.
242, April, May 2014.
All right.
And like the guy just goes through and he shows you how to, like they're replacing or they're putting in hardwood flooring where there used to be a floor register.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has to sort of like strip it back, and he just shows you the method for doing that. And I like it because, I mean, it really kind of gives you like a step-by-step how to do this, and
what were some of the cool tips that were in that one? I remember that article.
Yeah, well, in order to take out, because you have to kind of like tooth in the new pieces, so basically randomize the length, so you don't end up just with like a box shaped repair, which is what they would have ended up with if they just put new flooring in where the register was. So he's sort of staggering the ends so that it looks like it's all original. But in order to remove some of those pieces, he just like rips down sort of like the center of them, or in from the edges a little bit, so he's not hitting nails with a
it's two cuts, wasn't it?
Yeah,
like 2 cuts on each board.
Yeah, 2 cuts on each board, and then he's taking the center out, and then he's just sort of going through and taking out the edges, making sure that he's avoiding.
And I liked I was actually on this shoot because, and I just remembered while you were talking, and I completely forgot this, but we shot a bunch of video of this, so we actually have a full like multi-part episode Project House series where we walked through the whole process of this, and we even visited the lumber supplier that Scott, the author, goes to find good matches. Like sometimes he borrows replacement wood from closets or other areas where he can kind of buy a substitute wood and it won't be as obvious or as important, and then he uses like the best perfect match boards where they're going to be seen, or he can take these scraps and go to the a architectural salvage and say, sort through giant piles and find like the boards that have the right looking grain, cut at the right thickness, and the tongue in the same position, and all that stuff. What I thought was cool when we were doing that was the way that he because in this project, I can't remember, was it oak flooring? I think it's oak. Some of those pieces were like the full length of the room. Like there was no butt joints.
Right.
And so he would kind of stand back a little bit and take a Sharpie and just kind of like when he's getting ready to cut back the floor to kind of blend in that patch, he'll stand back and just kind of make a couple of random Sharpie butt joints so that he can, so it looks kind of, not like a too obvious of a alteration. It kind of blends in once he's done.
Okay.
But the hard truth of this kind of work is that you usually end up having to refinish the whole floor to make it come together at the end.
Yeah, and he says that there's wear on the on the original flooring and like you may buy the same exact wood, but it doesn't have 100 years of wear on it or 50 years of wear on it, and so you're still gonna have to sand.
Yeah.
So,
what do you got, BP?
I went with Mike Gurton joint on venting a tricky old roof.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and let me see.
That's a good call.
If I have the issue number here. Well, we'll put that. That'll be on the website, right? Mm-hmm. The issue number. Issue 205. For one thing, pretty much anything Mike does is awesome.
He's listening, so don't.
And really good. Oh, is he listening?
Don't compliment him too much.
All right. And two, like this is, you were just talking about old houses and the importance of keeping them healthy. And, a lot of times when you have old houses, they didn't have any roof venting. And, and often they had details that made it tricky to add roof venting as we know it now in terms of like, your standard kind of soffit vents that go up to, ridge vent. And so often if you're changing that house at all, you'll need to add roof venting. Let's say you're just putting insulation in the attic or something or tightening up the house at all, you're going to want to vent the roof. And few things I liked about this story. One is that that cutting in your ridge vent is something that a lot of houses need, old and historic or not that old. They just don't have a vent up there, and they need that. And it's actually not that hard of a thing to do. A couple of good tips on how to do it in this article. And you add your venting at the roof, and then if you can't add or don't want to, maybe for aesthetic reasons, vents at the soffits, there's actually a whole lot of options that I didn't know about, including intake vents that are a few shingle courses up the roof. There are kind of these stealth vents that slip under a shingle.
Yep.
There's vented drip edge. So there's a whole bunch of options I didn't know about that Mike brought to light in here. And then finally, Mike really breaks down in a way that anyone can use for any roof venting project the net-free venting space calculations that you need to do to figure out exactly how much venting you need at the eaves and at the
You mean don't just
ridge.
cut vents in and call it a day? Actually
Don't
think
just
about it?
call it. Think about it.
Yeah.
And we got a nice chart in there that Mike came up with on how to figure that out. So I like this story. I thought it was great. It's sort of like it's this old house story, but it's actually got a lot for anyone who's got to do some roof venting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Mike Gurton's worth a follow on Instagram. He's one of the I'm not going to say one of the few, but one of the things that I like about Mike on Instagram is that he's using that platform to share a lot of tips and tricks and good knowledge. He's not just showing beauty shots of look how beautiful this garage came out, or here's why I'm awesome. It's really like, here's how you should be doing this.
Yeah.
Here's another trick to get this done safer and faster.
Yeah. Mike has been. You said not to. He said not to give him too many compliments, but Mike has for a long time just wanted good building information to be spread and shared.
Yep.
That's been his mission.
Yep. And he's got a platform to do it.
Yeah.
Aside from all the stuff he's done with us. So hop on there and look for him. His last name is spelled Guertin. And Mr. Matt over here is going to work with him soon on another roof venting retrofit that's it's going to be super cool, but he's kind of already starting that job, and he's kind of working on it and sharing parts of it on Instagram too. So you can kind of see some of the behind the scenes of that if you hop over there and check it out.
He's got all sorts. I got to watch some of these videos. I bet they're great.
Yeah, he does a lot of videos. All right, so mine's issue 209, March 2010, and I chose Manny Silva replacing a rotten lally column.
Yeah.
And I love this article because it is so focused on by focusing on just this one thing. In this article, we replaced one rotten column in a basement that had water damage and was kind of corroded and failing. And because it was just one that we're focusing on, we could get really deep on the how-to of how Manny does it.
Yeah.
And there's tons of tips and tricks. And Manny is kind of, if anybody's seen his articles, he's very careful, very thorough. He's like the master of laying peel and stick. Like there's not a bubble.
Manny don't cut corners.
Yeah, he does not cut corners. And his truck he changes before he gets in his truck at the end of the day. Like it's spotless. But, he shares a lot of good tips about, it's very old house oriented. So, dealing with the common problems of going down into the basement and encountering everything from a hollow steel column to a tree holding up a beam.
Right.
And that the beams are usually sagging and that they either have poor support at the bottom or none. And he talks about kind of busting through the slab.
And he talks about whether or not you should, if they're sagging, whether or not you should address that.
Yeah.
And I think he comes down on leave it alone, right?
Well, we actually had a sidebar in the article by Rob Munich. Munich? How do you say his name?
I don't know.
He's an engineer.
Oh, okay.
And he talks about whether or not to try to correct sagging floors, and essentially not. It's essentially, it usually doesn't work. Sometimes you can get away with it, especially if it's like a really wide expanse and you're in the center of it. You can sometimes take up a little bit. Depends what's above it, because like plaster and drywall on the walls above does not want to move, and it's going to crack, and it's going to, or you might just end up jacking the whole house off of the foundation before that beam is going to really move. So most of the time they don't fix it. In this article, Manny was not attempting to fix it.
Yeah.
He was simply replacing the failing column with one that he knew wasn't going to fail. And because this basement gets wet a lot, he dug the footing, punched through the slab to pour a nice reinforced concrete footing. But he also extended it up in like a little deck pier by, maybe 6 inches or so that when he then put his steel concrete filled lally column on top of that, it was raised up off of the basement slab so that it was more likely to be safe from, the chance of flooding in the basement.
Right.
Just super smart stuff and a really great how-to. So that's definitely worth checking out.
Here's a question I've never gotten answered. Why do we choose lally columns for basement posts instead of timbers?
I'm sure that they can just carry more.
Is that it?
They can carry a ridiculously, just a lot more, like many times more weight.
More weight, and it costs nothing.
And I think there's options. Didn't Mike Gerton in the pro home, the first pro home we did in Rhode Island, didn't he use something even better than lally columns to get an even better? He could spread the support columns farther apart. He'll have to send us a note and remind us what he used there. But I think there's even like Uber columns that you can get that are even stronger. But of course, then the footings need to be bigger. You need to plan for that distribution of that load. It's not like you can just, take out a wood timber, replace it with this super load-bearing column and go, I'm done. It's like, well, that load is going somewhere. If you're not supporting it at the bottom, you're not really doing yourself any favors here.
Yeah.
So,
well, a lot of times the distances between those things is being dictated by the deflection on the timbers, not so much even on how much load you can put on those columms.
Right.
So
because you probably wouldn't need nearly as many from the column point of view as you would need from the beam flexing point of view.
There was one other that I wanted to bring up because I just thought this was a really interesting story, but it was
overachiever.
Got
an overachiever on the team
too.
No, the reason I kind of wanted to bring this one up, but I just want to briefly talk about it because retrofitting a foundation, and these guys go through all this trouble of picking up this house. To build a foundation under it and put the house back down just to knock the house down. And it was really only so that because they were leasing the property but owned the house. And so something had to stay on the property because they couldn't just tear the house down because then they would apparently lose the lease. So they jacked the house up, built a foundation, put the house back down, and then the next year knocked the house down and rebuilt it. But because the foundation was there, they were able to keep it. Which was just ridiculous.
And we wrote about that?
Yeah.
And what issue is that thing? That's
this is
way back.
February, March 2000.
Oh, that's not that
but
far
it's actually in earthquake country in the West Coast, there's a lot of foundation retrofits happening. A lot of, insufficient crawl space homes or slab built homes that are now getting, the houses are nice. They have some character. They're in a neighborhood, and they're getting lifted and new foundation poured and put back down on it.
Yeah.
And then they did that whole seismic retrofit from the foundation up to the roof, tying everything together. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It could be done if you care enough to do it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people just go, tear it down, make a new one. It's I guess there's fans of both options there. You guys want to do this last one? Or, Jeff, what do we have for a time here? Are we good?
We're about 50.
Screw it. Let's do that one next week. Get ourselves off to a good start. I'm not going to be here next week, so one of you clowns is going to be running the show.
All right.
Or Rob. So everybody should hop on over to findhomebuilding.com/podcast and send us the questions. We like some sawdusty stuff, too. Don't forget about that. Brian somehow worked roof venting into this episode, even though we're trying to avoid that these days. But I'm sure we'll talk about that again next week. So, yeah, questions, fhbpodcast@taunton.com. Follow us all on social media. Check out all the things. Don't forget to subscribe to Find Home Building, either in print or online, to get all these articles we're talking about. And anything else, fellas? All right, then. Jeff, when does this thing come out? When this thing comes out, is Fine Woodworking live the next day?
It's the first day of Fine Working Live.
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess it'll be too late for anybody to go. But they might be able to stop what they're doing on the job site and go to Massachusetts for Fine Woodworking Live, which is going to be a really cool show. I'm hoping to be able to pop over there, so come hang out, say hi. Let us know if you like the podcast. Okay, until next week, I'm Justin for Matt and Brian, saying keep craft alive and happy building.